The morning sun cast its golden fingers across the weathered stones of the ancient temple, each ray a whispered prayer that seemed to dance with the dust motes suspended in the sacred air. Sarah stood at the threshold, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom, while the weight of divine revelation pressed upon her shoulders with the burden of eternity itself. The bronze bells that hung from the entrance chimed their haunting melody, each note a reminder that she had been chosen not by her own merit or worthiness, but by the very fabric of heaven's design that wove her soul into the tapestry of God's eternal purpose. Her hands trembled as she reached toward the ancient door, her fingers tracing the worn symbols carved into the wood, a testament to countless generations who had walked this same path, their prayers echoing through the corridors of time like the gentle rustling of wings. The air itself seemed to shimmer with holy presence, thick with the scent of incense that spoke of sacrifices offered long ago and the promise of redemption yet to come. She could feel the eyes of the Almighty upon her back, piercing through her mortal flesh to see the depths of her heart, where every secret thought and hidden sin lay exposed before the throne of grace. Sarah. The voice came not from any human lips, but from somewhere deeper than her own consciousness, resonating in the chambers of her spirit with the power of creation itself. You have been called to walk the narrow path that leads to salvation, yet you hesitate in the shadow of doubt. The words struck her like lightning, illuminating truths that had lain buried beneath layers of fear and self-doubt since childhood. Her knees buckled, and she found herself kneeling upon the cold stone, her forehead pressed against the sacred ground, as tears of repentance streamed down her cheeks like rivers of fire that burned away the remnants of her old self. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath as she submitted to the divine will that had been shaping her destiny since before the foundations of the earth. Each drop of her tears became a prayer, each breath a surrender to the Father's perfect plan, and with each moment of yielding, she felt her soul expand beyond the confines of her mortal existence. The Holy Spirit descended upon her like a dove made of light, filling her being with such profound peace that even the angels in heaven must have wept to witness the transformation taking place within the heart of His chosen vessel. She understood now why she had been raised in the shadow of this temple, why the Lord had placed her in circumstances that seemed to mock her dreams, why the world had beaten her down with trials that would have broken lesser spirits. All of it had been preparation, a refining fire that had shaped her into the instrument God intended her to become. Her mistakes, her failures, her moments of weakness, all of them had been woven into the grand design of salvation, each thread carefully placed by divine providence to create a masterpiece that would glorify the Almighty's name. As she rose to her feet, transformed by the encounter with the living God, she knew that her life would never be the same. The choices that had once seemed so important, so utterly hers to make, now revealed themselves to be mere whispers in the wind compared to the thunderous voice of divine calling that now echoed in her soul. She was no longer merely Sarah, daughter of man, but Sarah, the chosen one, called to carry the light of heaven into the darkness of a fallen world. The weight of this sacred responsibility settled upon her like a crown heavy with the blood of sacrifice and the promise of resurrection. In that sacred moment, surrounded by the silence of eternity and the whisper of heaven's approval, she understood that her decisions would indeed impact her life forever. But not because they were wrong, they were right, perfectly right in the grand symphony of God's eternal purpose. The choice was made, the destiny sealed, and she was ready to align herself with the will of heaven itself, trusting that the Father's ways were higher than her own, and His love was greater than all the storms of this mortal life. The celestial voices that had been whispering in the recesses of her soul for months now crescendoed into a thunderous symphony that seemed to shake the very foundations of her being. Sarah stood in the dimly lit chapel, her hands trembling as she clutched the worn Bible, feeling the weight of divine intervention pressing down upon her, like a benediction from heaven itself. The stained glass windows cast kaleidoscopic patterns of light across the stone floor, each hue representing a different aspect of the Almighty's infinite wisdom. Yet none could illuminate the darkness that had taken root in her heart. Her knees buckled beneath her as she sank to the cold marble steps, her prayer book slipping from her grasp and landing open to the page where she had scribbled her desperate pleas just weeks prior. The words, "Lord, help me find my way," were barely legible now, smeared by tears that had fallen countless times since that fateful evening when she had made the choice that would forever alter the trajectory of her existence. The Holy Spirit spoke through the silence with such clarity that it pierced through the veil of doubt that had plagued her for so long. It was not a voice that could be heard with human ears, but rather a profound knowing that settled deep within her bones like a warm fire that had been waiting patiently for her to acknowledge its presence. The divine message resonated through every fiber of her being, speaking not just to her intellect, but to the very core of her spirit, where the eternal dance between light and shadow had been playing out for years. "Chosen one," the voice intoned with the authority of the Almighty himself. "Your wrong decisions will impact your life forever. Align with God's will to change your destiny." The words carried the weight of prophecy, each syllable pregnant with cosmic significance. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat as she realized that this was not merely a warning, but a sacred invitation to embrace her true purpose. In that moment, she understood that her journey had never truly been about the choices she had made, but rather about the opportunity to transform them through divine grace. The path ahead was not one of punishment or retribution, but of redemption and restoration. Her heart, which had been heavy with regret and fear, began to lift as she felt the gentle touch of heavenly fingers, guiding her toward the light that had always been there, waiting patiently for her return. The walls of the chapel seemed to dissolve around her, revealing a vast expanse of celestial beauty, where golden light flowed like rivers of liquid sunshine, illuminating the sacred space with an otherworldly radiance. She saw her past mistakes not as obstacles to overcome, but as stepping stones that had led her to this moment of divine revelation. Each wrong decision, each moment of doubt and fear had been orchestrated by a loving Father who knew her heart better than she knew herself. As the vision faded and she returned to the physical realm, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The burden of her past no longer weighed upon her shoulders, for she understood now that she was not alone in her struggles. The divine plan was unfolding exactly as it was meant to, and her role in this grand tapestry of salvation was more significant than she had ever imagined possible. The choice before her was clear surrender to God's will and embrace the transformation that awaited her, or remain trapped in the prison of her own making, forever chasing shadows instead of walking in the light of His perfect love. The weight of eternity pressed upon her consciousness, and she knew without question that this was the beginning of her true calling, the moment when her destiny would be rewritten through the power of divine alignment. The heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath as the divine voice pierced through the veil of mortal understanding, each word carrying the weight of eternity itself. Chosen one, your heart had been beating in rhythm with the world's chaos, but now the cosmic symphony demanded a different tempo, one that would resonate with the very pulse of the Almighty. The decision you made, the path you chose, was not merely a moment of human will, but a convergence of celestial purpose and earthly consequence. Every step you took, every breath you drew, every tear that fell upon the sacred soil of your existence carried within it the potential to either align with the infinite mercy of God or to be forever marked by the shadow of your own choosing. The universe itself groaned with the magnitude of your choice, for you stood at the precipice where mortal decisions become eternal realities. Your wrong decisions, like dark clouds gathering on the horizon of your soul, would cast long shadows across the landscape of your being, stretching beyond the boundaries of this life into the vast expanse of divine judgment. Yet even in this darkness, there existed the possibility of redemption, a glimmer of hope that could only be kindled by surrendering your will to the greater will of the Creator, who had designed you for purposes far beyond your comprehension. The spiritual warfare that raged within your spirit was unlike any battle ever fought for. It was not against flesh and blood, but against the very forces that sought to bind your soul in chains of despair and self-deception. The enemy had whispered lies in your ear, convincing you that your path was the only one worth taking, that your vision was the only truth that mattered. But the voice that called from the throne of heaven was different, soothing yet commanding, gentle yet unrelenting in its call to return to the fold of divine love. Align with God's will, O chosen one, for only then can you begin to understand the magnificent tapestry of your destiny. The threads that seemed to weave together in patterns of confusion were actually part of a master plan that stretched back beyond the foundation of time itself. Your life had been written in the books of heaven before the first star was born, and every misstep you took was not a failure, but a necessary chapter in a story that would ultimately reveal the glory of divine grace. The very act of choosing to align yourself with God's will was an act of rebellion against the darkness that had sought to steal your light, a declaration that you would no longer be a pawn in the game of human ambition, but a vessel for the infinite love that flows from the heart of the Almighty. As you stand at this crossroads, feeling the weight of eternity pressing down upon your shoulders, remember that you are not alone. The Holy Spirit dwells within you, whispering truths that the world cannot comprehend, guiding your footsteps along paths that lead to salvation rather than destruction. The Father's love for you is so profound that He sent His only Son to die for your sins to bridge the chasm between your broken humanity and His perfect holiness. In this moment of crisis, when your soul feels like it might shatter under the pressure of your own mistakes, know that you are being drawn deeper into the mystery of divine grace, deeper into the sanctuary of God's presence where all wounds are healed and all hearts find rest. The spiritual mission that has been entrusted to you is not merely a burden to bear, but a privilege to embrace, for you have been chosen to reflect the light of Christ in a world that desperately needs to see the way back to the source of all goodness. Your destiny is not written in the sand of human achievement, but in the eternal ink of divine purpose, and every choice you make moving forward will either bring you closer to that purpose or push you further away from the peace that surpasses all understanding. The choice is yours, beloved one, but know that the door to redemption stands wide open, waiting for you to walk through it with humble hearts and repentant spirits. The heavens trembled with the weight of divine proclamation, each word resonating through the fabric of existence like sacred thunder rolling across ancient mountains. The voice that spoke was not merely human, but the very essence of Almighty God's own breath, carrying the infinite wisdom of eternity through the mortal realm. In that moment, the chosen one stood suspended between two worlds, the earthly plane where doubt whispered its lies, and the celestial domain where truth danced in perfect harmony with love. How could such a burden be placed upon mortal flesh? The weight of divine decree pressed against their soul like a mountain of crystalline light, each syllable cutting through the veil of earthly confusion to reveal the sacred purpose that had been woven into their very being from the moment of conception. The chosen one felt the cosmic dance of destiny unfolding before them. Each decision a thread in the tapestry of divine providence, each choice a prayer whispered to the heavens that would echo through eternity. The darkness that had plagued their spirit for so many years suddenly seemed to recede like morning mist before the rising sun. The shadow of rebellion that had consumed their heart began to dissipate as the light of divine understanding flooded their soul. They understood now that their suffering was not punishment, but rather the refining fire that transforms dross into gold, that purifies the heart until it becomes a vessel worthy of containing the infinite grace of God. In the depths of their being, a profound recognition stirred a recognition that they were never truly alone. That every moment of pain, every tear shed in silence, every prayer offered in desperation had been heard by the Father who loved them beyond measure. The chosen one felt the gentle fingers of divine guidance caressing their troubled spirit, leading them back toward the path of righteousness with the patience of a shepherd who knows his sheep by name. The spiritual awakening that followed was like nothing the world had ever witnessed, a transformation so complete that even the angels themselves paused in their eternal worship to witness this miraculous metamorphosis. The chosen one's eyes, once clouded with confusion and despair, now reflected the pure radiance of celestial truth. They saw clearly now the intricate web of divine intervention that had guided their steps throughout their journey, the hidden hand of providence that had shaped their experiences into a masterpiece of spiritual growth. Every misstep, every fall, every moment of weakness had served a greater purpose in the grand design of salvation. The chosen one realized that their perceived failures were not defeats, but stepping stones toward a higher calling. Each mistake a lesson learned in the school of divine mercy. The weight of their past decisions no longer felt like chains, but like the precious metal of their spiritual refinement, forged in the fires of adversity to become something magnificent and holy. As the sacred message settled into their consciousness, the chosen one felt the earth itself begin to resonate with the rhythm of divine will. The very ground beneath their feet pulsed with the heartbeat of creation, reminding them that they were part of something infinitely larger than their individual struggles. The cosmos itself acknowledged their spiritual awakening, the stars aligning in perfect harmony to illuminate the path ahead. The voice of God continued to speak through the silence of their soul, revealing truths that transcended human comprehension. They understood now that their destiny was not merely personal, but universal. A sacred mission to carry the light of divine love into a world that had forgotten its way home. The chosen one felt the burden of their calling not as a curse, but as a privilege, a sacred trust that would allow them to participate in the ongoing work of redemption that had begun with the first act of divine love in the Garden of Eden. The path forward shimmered with possibility, each step illuminated by the promise of divine partnership. The chosen one knew that their journey would not be easy, that the road ahead would test their faith in ways they could not yet imagine. But they also knew that they would not walk it alone, for the Father's love was boundless and His grace sufficient for every trial that awaited them. The voice that spoke through the silence of her midnight prayers carried the weight of eternity itself, each word a sacred hammer striking against the foundation of her soul. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the worn Bible, its pages soft beneath her fingertips like the whispered prayers of countless believers who had come before her. The message burned into her consciousness with the intensity of divine fire, searing itself into her very being, with promises and warnings that would echo through the corridors of her eternal existence. Chosen one, the voice continued not with the harshness of judgment, but with the gentle persistence of a loving father calling his wayward child home. Your wrong decisions will impact your life forever. Align with God's will to change your destiny. The words danced in her mind like celestial butterflies, their wings carrying messages from realms beyond human comprehension, yet somehow so intimately personal that they felt as though carved directly into her heart. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she understood that this was no ordinary revelation, but rather a sacred invitation to step into her true purpose. The weight of her choices, those moments of hesitation and fear that had shaped her path, suddenly revealed themselves as the very threads weaving the tapestry of her soul's journey. Each misstep, each moment of doubt, each decision born from fear rather than faith had been leading her toward this very moment of reckoning. She closed her eyes and felt the presence of something infinitely greater than herself, a divine consciousness that permeated every atom of creation, every heartbeat, every prayer that had ever been offered. This was the same force that had breathed life into Adam and Eve, that had spoken light into darkness at the beginning of time, that had called forth the universe from the void. And now this same infinite love was reaching out to her, calling her back to alignment with the original design of her soul. The spiritual awakening that coursed through her being was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if the veil between heaven and earth had grown thin enough for her to glimpse the magnificent reality that existed just beyond the boundaries of ordinary perception. She saw her life not as a series of random events or unfortunate circumstances, but as a carefully orchestrated symphony of divine intervention, each note played with perfect precision by the master composer. Her past mistakes, those decisions that had seemed so devastating at the time, were now revealed to be necessary chapters in her spiritual education. They were the very experiences that had prepared her heart for the deeper understanding that awaited her, the kind of wisdom that could only be gained through the crucible of struggle and the refining fire of divine correction. Each wrong turn had been a teacher, each painful choice a lesson that would ultimately lead her to the truth of her divine calling. As she sat in that quiet room surrounded by the sacred symbols of her faith, Sarah felt the ancient power of the Almighty working within her, transforming her from the inside out. The voice continued its gentle guidance, speaking not of punishment, but of restoration, not of condemnation, but of redemption. Align with God's will to change your destiny, it whispered, and she knew that this was not merely a suggestion, but a promise, that the divine plan could be rewritten through surrender, through complete trust in the goodness of the Creator who loved her beyond measure. The spiritual transformation that began in that moment would ripple outward through all the dimensions of her existence, touching every relationship, every opportunity, every moment of her future life. She was no longer simply a woman making her way through the world. She was a vessel chosen for a purpose that transcended the limitations of human understanding. A servant called to carry the light of divine love into a world that desperately needed to see the face of God reflected in human form. The voice that spoke through the darkness was not merely sound, but a vibration that seemed to originate from the very core of existence itself, resonating through her bones and awakening something ancient and sacred within her soul. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the worn pages of her grandmother's journal, each word written in trembling script, telling the story of a woman who had walked the narrow path between divine calling and human weakness. The candlelight danced across the yellowed parchment like the flickering flames of hope itself, illuminating the words that would reshape her understanding of purpose. Chosen one, the voice whispered again, this time accompanied by the gentle rustling of wings that seemed to brush against her consciousness from beyond the veil of earthly comprehension. She closed her eyes and felt herself being pulled into a vast tapestry of divine intention, where every thread represented a choice made in faith or fear, a moment of surrender or stubborn resistance. The weight of eternity pressed upon her shoulders like a mantle of light, and she understood with sudden clarity that her life had never been about her alone. In the silence that followed, Sarah could hear the heartbeat of the world around her. The pulse of creation itself, the gentle breathing of the earth, the whisper of prayers ascending like incense to heaven. Her grandmother's journal spoke not just of past struggles, but of a living legacy that connected all who had ever sought to align their will with the divine plan. The words began to flow from the page in a language older than words, speaking directly to her spirit in ways that transcended rational understanding. The spiritual mission that had been forming in her heart for months now crystallized into sharp clarity. She was not merely a person caught in circumstances, but a vessel chosen for a purpose that predated her birth. The decisions that had seemed so devastatingly wrong, her career choices that had led away from her family's expectations, her relationship with David that had ended in heartbreak, her abandonment of what she thought was her calling, all of these were not failures, but stepping stones toward a greater design. The voice continued its message with the authority of one who had walked the corridors of heaven itself, speaking in tongues that only the spiritually awakened could understand. Your wrong decisions will impact your life forever, it said. But there was no condemnation in the words, only the profound love that sees beyond failure to the potential that lies dormant within every soul. But align with God's will to change your destiny. The phrase echoed through her consciousness like a bell tolled in the cathedral of her spirit, each note resonating deeper than she had ever known possible. Sarah felt herself being drawn into a vision of her future, not the future she had planned, but the future that awaited her when she surrendered completely to the divine flow. She saw herself standing before a crowd of souls seeking guidance, her hands open in blessing, her heart full of compassion for those who had stumbled as she had stumbled. The image was not of triumph, but of transformation, of becoming exactly what God had intended her to be, rather than what she had desperately wanted to be. The candle flickered once more, casting shadows that danced like spirits of light and darkness, and she understood that her entire journey had been leading to this moment of perfect alignment. Every wrong turn, every moment of doubt, every choice that had seemed to lead away from her purpose had actually been drawing her closer to the path that would fulfill her destiny. The spiritual mission was not about avoiding mistakes, but about learning to transform them into stepping stones toward divine purpose. As the final words of the message settled over her soul like a benediction, Sarah felt the ancient power of her grandmother's faith flowing through her veins, connecting her to generations of women who had carried the burden of divine calling and emerged transformed by their obedience to God's will. The voice was silent now, but its presence remained a warm glow that would guide her forward through whatever trials lay ahead. The voice that echoed through the hollow chambers of her soul carried the weight of divine decree, each syllable a hammer striking against the foundations of her mortal understanding. Chosen one, your wrong decisions will impact your life forever. Align with God's will to change your destiny. The words reverberated not merely as audible sound, but as sacred vibration threading themselves through the very fabric of her being, awakening something ancient and profound within the depths of her spirit. Sarah felt her heart begin to beat in rhythm with something far greater than her own mortal pulse. The room around her seemed to dissolve, replaced by a vast cathedral of light, where every beam sang with the glory of eternity. She could feel the presence of the Almighty pressing against her consciousness, not as an external force, but as an intimate embrace that transcended the boundaries between creator and created. In this moment, she understood that she was not merely a woman standing in a dimly lit chamber, but a vessel chosen for purposes beyond human comprehension, a conduit through which divine will might flow into the world of shadows and sorrow. The weight of her choices pressed upon her like mountains, each decision she had made in her life's journey, becoming a stone in the path toward either salvation or damnation. She thought of the moments when she had turned away from what was right, when she had chosen comfort over conscience, when she had allowed fear to dictate her actions instead of faith. These choices were not mere accidents of fate, but deliberate acts of rebellion against the cosmic order that had been designed for her ultimate good. But here in this sacred revelation, she saw something else entirely, a promise that transcended the limitations of human weakness and earthly failure. The voice spoke not just of judgment, but of redemption, not merely of consequences, but of transformation. Align with God's will to change your destiny. The words held such power that they seemed to rewrite the very script of her existence, transforming the tragic narrative she had been living into a story of divine purpose and celestial calling. As the vision deepened, Sarah found herself witnessing the grand tapestry of creation itself, where every thread of existence was woven together by the invisible hands of divine providence. She saw how her life, once seemingly random and chaotic, was actually part of a magnificent design that stretched across time and space, connecting her individual story to the eternal drama of salvation history. The choices that had once seemed so devastating now revealed themselves as necessary steps in a greater plan, each misstep serving as a crucible in which her character would be refined and her spirit would be strengthened. The divine presence filled her lungs with sacred breath, and she felt her soul expand to encompass the infinite love that had been waiting patiently for her return to alignment with the heavenly purpose. This was not simply about making better choices. It was about surrendering her will completely to the will of God, allowing herself to become a living testament to the power of grace to transform even the most broken hearts into instruments of divine beauty. Her destiny was not fixed in stone, but existed in the realm of possibility, waiting to be shaped by her willingness to yield to the holy fire that would purify her heart and illuminate her path forward. In that sacred moment of revelation, Sarah understood that her calling was not merely personal, but universal, that her transformation would serve as a beacon of hope for others who had lost their way in the wilderness of life. The weight of her responsibility was both terrifying and glorious, for she was now called to be a vessel of light in a world shrouded in darkness, a living proof that divine mercy could triumph over human frailty, and that God's love was stronger than any sin or failure that had ever marked her soul. The heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath as the divine voice echoed through the sacred corridors of eternity, each word carrying the weight of cosmic judgment and infinite mercy. The chosen one stood at the precipice of destiny, his soul trembling like a leaf caught in the storm of divine providence. These were not mere words spoken from above. They were the very essence of God's lamentation over humanity's fallen state, yet woven with threads of hope that could mend even the deepest wounds of the spirit. In that moment, as if the very fabric of reality bent to accommodate this sacred dialogue, the air shimmered with celestial fire, and the ground beneath his feet began to pulse with the rhythm of creation itself. The voice that had spoken was not merely audible, but felt in the marrow of his bones, resonating through every cell of his being with the authority of the Almighty. Each syllable carried the burden of eternity, the weight of countless prayers and tears that had been offered up to heaven, waiting for this singular moment when divine will would align with human choice. The chosen one's heart, once heavy with doubt and fear, began to transform under the gentle pressure of celestial grace. His soul, previously fractured by the weight of wrong decisions, started to heal as he understood that redemption was not a distant dream, but a present reality available to those who would surrender their will to the greater good. The spiritual awakening that coursed through him was like a river of light breaking through the darkness of his past mistakes, illuminating the path that led toward salvation. His eyes, once clouded with confusion and despair, now reflected the clarity of divine vision. He saw not just his own journey, but the interconnected web of souls that had been touched by his choices, both positive and negative. Every decision that had seemed to lead him astray was now revealed as part of a larger tapestry woven together by the invisible hands of providence. The pain of his wrongdoings, which had once felt like a permanent scar, began to fade into something beautiful, a testament to his capacity for growth and transformation. The spiritual mission that had been thrust upon him was not one of punishment, but of purpose. He was called to be a vessel of divine love to carry the message of hope to those who had lost their way, to demonstrate that no soul was beyond the reach of God's infinite mercy. The weight of this calling pressed upon his shoulders like a mantle of light, yet it did not crush him. It lifted him higher than he had ever imagined possible. As he stood there suspended between the earthly realm and the divine, the chosen one felt the presence of countless saints and prophets who had walked this same path before him. Their prayers became his strength, their sufferings, his inspiration, their victories, his hope. The spiritual communion that connected him to the heavenly host was so profound that he could feel their collective heartbeat, their shared longing for the return of the light that had been lost to the world. The voice spoke again, softer now, more intimate, like a mother's whisper to her child. Your destiny is not fixed, beloved one. Your choices, your repentance, your willingness to align with my will. These are the keys that unlock the door to eternal peace. The words were not threats, but promises, not condemnation, but liberation. They spoke of a future where all things would be made new, where the broken pieces of his past would become the foundation for an even greater purpose. In that sacred space between heaven and earth, the chosen one understood that his life had never truly been about him alone. It was about the countless souls who would be touched by his story, whose hearts would be healed by his example, whose lives would be transformed by his willingness to embrace divine will over personal desire. This realization filled his heart with an overwhelming sense of purpose, a certainty that transcended all earthly concerns and connected him to the eternal dance of love that was the very foundation of existence itself. The heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath as the divine voice echoed through the sacred chambers of eternity, each word carrying the weight of cosmic purpose and the trembling heart of mortal consequence. The chosen one stood at the precipice of destiny, his soul trembling like a leaf caught in the tempest of divine will, as if the very fabric of existence had torn open to reveal the hidden truths that would reshape his understanding of his purpose. In that moment of crystalline clarity, the weight of his choices pressed upon him like mountains of lead. Each decision he had made in the labyrinth of his mortal journey, now revealing itself as threads in the grand tapestry of divine providence. The voice spoke not merely as a command, but as a lamentation from the heart of God himself, a cry that pierced through the veil of human comprehension with the intensity of a lover's yearning for reunion. Your wrong decisions, the voice whispered. Yet it was not condemnation that filled the air, but rather an infinite compassion that saw beyond the surface of his mortal frailty to the eternal spark of divinity that burned within his chest. Each misstep, each moment of hesitation, each choice born of fear rather than faith. These are not mere mistakes, but stepping stones toward a deeper understanding of your true calling. The chosen one felt his knees weaken beneath him as the truth of his spiritual journey crashed over him like a tidal wave of revelation. He had believed himself to be walking the narrow path of righteousness, yet now he understood that his so-called noble intentions had been clouded by the very things that separated mortals from the divine pride, fear, and the insatiable hunger for control that consumed his mortal heart. The spiritual landscape around him began to shift and transform, revealing glimpses of what might have been had he aligned his will with the cosmic rhythm of divine purpose. Visions of countless souls who had walked similar paths of confusion and error danced before his eyes, each one a testament to the infinite mercy that awaited those who would turn from their wandering ways and embrace the light of authentic spiritual alignment. You are called not merely to serve, but to become. The voice continued its resonance, filling every corner of his being with the profound truth that his existence was not meant to be a solitary pilgrimage, but rather a vessel through which divine love could flow into the world. His previous understanding of his mission had been too small, too limited by the boundaries of human perception and the constraints of earthly ambition. The spiritual fire that had been burning within his soul since birth now blazed with unprecedented intensity, illuminating the dark corridors of his past decisions with the pure radiance of divine judgment tempered by infinite mercy. Each wrong choice became not a curse but a lesson, each moment of doubt a teacher, each instance of failure a gateway to deeper spiritual maturity. As the chosen one stood there suspended between his former self and his destined calling, he felt the universe itself respond to his spiritual awakening. The stars aligned in patterns that spoke of ancient prophecies. The wind carried messages from distant realms of spiritual understanding, and even the earth beneath his feet trembled with the vibration of divine approval for his eventual transformation. This was not just a warning or a rebuke, but a sacred invitation to participate in the ongoing work of redemption that flowed through all creation like a river of light. The voice continued speaking words that would echo through the chambers of his soul for eternity. Align with God's will, and you shall discover that your destiny is not something to be achieved, but something to be revealed as you surrender completely to the divine dance of love and purpose that governs all existence. The heavens themselves seemed to weep as the divine message descended upon her soul like lightning striking a sacred temple. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the ancient parchment, her heart hammering against her ribs with the weight of celestial revelation. Each word that had been written in ethereal script felt like fire upon her flesh, burning away the illusions of her mortal understanding and revealing the stark truth that had been hidden beneath layers of human weakness and temporal desires. In that moment, suspended between earth and heaven, she understood that she was not merely chosen, but called to an eternal dance of redemption, where every decision would echo through the corridors of eternity like ripples across an infinite sea. The voice that spoke within her spirit was not merely audible, but palpable, a warm presence that filled her bones with sacred fire and her lungs with the breath of the Almighty Himself. Your wrong decisions, the divine whisper seemed to say, are not mere mistakes, but stepping stones toward a greater understanding of the divine plan that has been woven through the fabric of creation since the first light kissed the darkness. She felt her soul expand her consciousness, stretching beyond the boundaries of her physical form to encompass the vast tapestry of existence itself. Every choice, every moment of hesitation, every path not taken became part of a grand symphony of salvation that only she could help compose. The weight of this calling pressed upon her like the pressure of ocean depths, yet it also filled her with a joy so profound that tears streamed down her face in rivers of pure spiritual ecstasy. She saw herself as a vessel, a chalice of divine purpose, her life's trajectory no longer determined by human will or earthly ambition, but by the eternal blueprint that had been laid out before the foundations of the world. The spiritual mission that now burned within her chest was not one of conquest or dominion, but of transformation, of becoming a living testament to God's infinite mercy and grace. She understood that her destiny was not a fixed point, but a flowing river shaped by her alignment with the divine will that had always been present, waiting patiently for her surrender to its sacred rhythm. The very air around her began to shimmer with holy light, as if the universe itself was acknowledging her awakening to this higher calling. As she stood there in the sacred space, her soul began to sing with a melody that transcended human language, a psalm of redemption that spoke directly to the heart of God Himself. The burden of her past mistakes transformed into fuel for her spiritual ascent, each regret becoming a prayer that lifted her closer to the throne of grace. The divine plan, once obscured by her limited perspective, now revealed itself as a masterpiece of love, where even her failures had been woven into the pattern of ultimate restoration. The message resonated deep within her being, not just as a warning, but as an invitation to participate in the greatest story ever told, the story of how the Almighty transforms broken vessels into instruments of His glory, turning the darkness of human frailty into the brilliant light of divine purpose. Her destiny was no longer a matter of chance or human calculation, but a sacred covenant between her willing heart and the infinite love that had created her for this very moment. The weight of divine revelation pressed upon her soul like the heavy mantle of prophecy that had been thrust upon the shoulders of ancient prophets. Yet this burden felt different, more intimate, more personal, as if the very heavens themselves had whispered directly into her heart's deepest chambers. The voice that had spoken these terrible words had not come from the thunderous roar of Sinai or the gentle whisper of the Holy Spirit, but rather from somewhere deeper, more fundamental, a resonance that seemed to emanate from the very core of existence itself, from the primordial intersection where mortal will met divine purpose. She stood in the cathedral's shadowed nave, her fingers trembling against the cold stone of the altar rail. Each prayer bead she had been counting now scattered like fallen leaves across the marble floor. The stained glass windows cast their kaleidoscope of colors upon her face, transforming her features into something both beautiful and sorrowful, as though the very light itself was mourning what was to come. Her breath came in shallow gasps, each one a prayer and a plea all at once, as she realized that the choice before her was not merely about temporal matters of love or loyalty, but about the eternal architecture of her own soul. The words echoed within her consciousness with such clarity that she could feel them written in the language of angels, the sacred tongue that transcended human understanding, speaking directly to the spirit realm beyond the veil. Your wrong decisions will impact your life forever, the divine message had proclaimed, and indeed she could feel the weight of those consequences pressing down upon her spirit like the accumulated gravity of countless moments of hesitation, of compromise, of the quiet surrender to lesser things, rather than the bold embrace of God's perfect will. But there was also hope, that precious gift that burned like a flame in the darkness, illuminating the path forward when all seemed lost. For in the same breath that spoke of consequence, there came another promise: align with God's will to change your destiny. These words carried the power of creation itself, the same divine command that had brought light out of darkness, order from chaos, salvation from despair. To align with God's will was not simply to follow a set of rules or perform religious duties, but to become a living conduit for the divine purpose that had always been waiting within the depths of her being. She closed her eyes and felt the presence of the Almighty surrounding her. Like a warm embrace, His love flowing through her like a river of grace that had been patiently waiting for her to open herself to its flow. The spiritual landscape within her began to shift and transform, as if the very foundation of her soul was being restructured by forces greater than her own understanding. Each cell of her being seemed to resonate with the vibration of sacred purpose, and she knew that the choice before her was not merely about her own salvation, but about her role in the grand tapestry of divine redemption that spanned across all of human history. The mission that had been placed upon her shoulders was not one of earthly glory or temporal power, but of spiritual transformation and healing. She would be called to carry the light of divine truth into places where darkness had taken root, to plant seeds of hope in soil that had grown bitter with disappointment, to offer the balm of forgiveness where wounds had festered for too long. This was the work of a chosen vessel, one whose life would be forever altered by the crossroads upon which he now stood, where the path of comfort and ease diverged sharply from the road of sacrifice and service. As the hours passed and the sanctuary grew quiet around her, she found herself drawn into deeper communion with the divine mystery that surrounded her. The weight of responsibility settled upon her like a crown not of gold, but of purest intention, and she understood that every decision made in alignment with God's will would ripple outward in ways that would extend far beyond her own immediate experience, touching lives she would never know. Generations yet unborn souls that had been waiting in anticipation for just such a moment of divine intervention in the unfolding story of human redemption. The heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath as the voice echoed through the sacred chambers of the soul, each word a thunderous revelation that shattered the fragile illusions of human understanding. Chosen One. The title burned like fire across the darkness of uncertainty, yet it carried the weight of a burden that would consume the very essence of one's being, if not properly embraced. The divine message hung suspended between the realms of mortal comprehension and celestial wisdom, demanding an answer that would determine not merely the course of individual existence, but the very fabric of eternal destiny itself. In that moment of profound revelation, the chosen one stood at the precipice of transformation, where the shadows of past decisions cast long and ominous silhouettes against the luminous promise of divine grace. Each misstep, each deviation from the path of righteousness had been meticulously recorded by the omniscient eye of heaven, their consequences rippling through the cosmic tapestry like stones thrown into still waters, creating waves of consequence that would echo through eternity. The weight of these wrong decisions pressed upon the spirit with the force of mountains. Yet within this crushing burden lay the opportunity for transcendence, for the alchemical transformation that only comes through suffering and surrender. The call to align with God's will was not merely a suggestion or a gentle invitation. It was the ultimate declaration of purpose, a divine summons that demanded complete devotion and unwavering faith. To align oneself with the Almighty's plan was to submit one's will to the infinite wisdom that transcended human understanding, to trust in the mysterious ways of divine providence, even when the path ahead remained shrouded in darkness. This alignment was not a passive acceptance, but an active participation in the grand design, a conscious choice to become instruments of celestial purpose, rather than mere spectators of earthly drama. As the chosen one contemplated this profound calling, the spiritual landscape of the soul began to shift and transform. The familiar terrain of personal ambition and worldly desires started to fade like morning mist before the rising sun of divine consciousness. In their place arose new vistas of spiritual awareness, where every breath became a prayer and every heartbeat a hymn to the Creator who had called them into being. The transformation was both terrifying and beautiful, like watching a flower bloom in the dark of night, its petals unfurling with delicate precision to reveal the hidden splendor that had always existed beneath the surface of ordinary perception. The message spoke not just of consequences, but of possibilities of how wrong decisions could be redeemed through right alignment, how the broken pieces of a life lived apart from divine purpose could be gathered up and remade into something infinitely more precious than the original fragments. This was not a simple matter of forgiveness or absolution, but a profound spiritual rebirth that required the complete surrender of self-will to the will of God. It meant acknowledging that true freedom came not from doing whatever one pleased, but from choosing to do what was pleasing to the divine, even when that choice led to sacrifice and suffering that would have seemed preferable to the alternatives in the mind of the unenlightened soul. The chosen one felt the presence of the Almighty drawing near not as some distant deity to be feared, but as a loving Father whose heart yearned to restore what had been lost and to elevate what had been lowered. In this divine embrace, all previous failures and missteps were transformed from sources of shame and regret into the very foundation upon which new spiritual strength could be built. The journey ahead would be marked by trials and tribulations that would test the resolve of even the most devoted servant, but it would also offer unprecedented opportunities for growth, for becoming more fully the person God intended them to be from the beginning of time itself. The heavens themselves seemed to weep as the divine message descended upon her soul like lightning splitting the midnight sky. Sarah stood in the dimly lit chapel, her hands trembling as she clutched the ancient parchment that had been delivered to her doorstep 3 days prior, its edges worn smooth by countless prayers and tears. The words burned into her consciousness with the intensity of a holy fire, each syllable carrying the weight of eternity itself. Chosen one, the message whispered through the sacred silence. Your wrong decisions will impact your life forever. Align with God's will to change your destiny. The very air around her shimmered with divine presence, as if the Almighty himself was leaning down from a celestial throne to speak directly into her heart. She could feel the weight of centuries of prayer and sacrifice pressing against her chest, a burden that felt both unbearable and necessary. Sarah's knees buckled beneath her as she sank to the cold stone floor, her eyes fixed upon the flickering candlelight that danced across the weathered walls of the chapel. The scent of aged incense filled her nostrils, mingling with the sweet perfume of white roses that had somehow bloomed in the corner where she had placed them during her last desperate prayer. How could this be happening? How could she, a simple woman with a modest past, suddenly find herself at the center of such cosmic significance? The voice that spoke within her spirit was not one of condemnation, but of profound love, like a mother's gentle whisper to a wayward child. "My daughter," it said, "you have walked the path of doubt and fear for too long. Your choices have been guided by human understanding rather than divine wisdom. But I see you now, truly see you, and I offer you the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to realign your will with mine." As the words settled into her soul like warm honey, Sarah felt something shift within her chest, a deep, resonant chord that had been silent for years now. The memories of her childhood flooded back, flooding her mind with images of her grandmother's hands, weathered and wise, teaching her to read the Psalms by candlelight. "The Lord is my shepherd," her grandmother would say, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the power of the Almighty Himself. "I shall not want." Those words had been her anchor through every storm, yet she had forgotten them in her darkest hours. The spiritual dimension opened before her like a vast cathedral of light, and she saw herself not as she had been, but as she might become. Her hands, once shaking with uncertainty, now trembled with the anticipation of divine purpose. She saw visions of healing hands of lives transformed by grace of a destiny that stretched beyond the boundaries of mortal comprehension. The Holy Spirit moved through her like a gentle wind, clearing away the fog of self-doubt and revealing the true nature of her calling. In that moment, Sarah understood that her entire life had been leading toward this revelation, not through the grand gestures or spectacular signs, but through the quiet moments of surrender, the small acts of faith that had built up her character over decades. Each prayer offered in desperation, each tear shed in loneliness, each step taken forward despite the darkness. All of these were part of a larger divine plan that only now was becoming visible to her. The message had not come to punish her, but to redeem her, not to destroy her past mistakes, but to transform them into stepping stones toward a greater purpose. She was chosen not because she was perfect, but because she was willing to be made perfect through the grace of God. The weight of responsibility that pressed upon her shoulders was not a curse, but a calling to serve as a vessel for divine mercy in a world that desperately needed it. As the first rays of dawn began to pierce through the chapel windows, Sarah rose to her feet, her spirit renewed and her heart filled with an ineffable peace that transcended all earthly understanding. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew now that she would walk it with the unshakable assurance of one who had been chosen by the Almighty Himself. The future stretched before her like an endless ocean, and she would sail it with faith as her compass and love as her guide. The heavens trembled with the weight of divine judgment as the sacred scroll unfurled its ancient prophecy before the chosen one's trembling eyes. Each letter seemed to pulse with celestial fire, illuminating the darkness that had consumed his soul for so many years. The voice that spoke through the cosmic winds carried the authority of eternity itself. Yet it was not harsh or condemning. It was the voice of a loving father calling his wayward child home. "Your wrong decisions," the voice whispered across the void between heaven and earth, "have carved their mark upon the tapestry of your existence, weaving threads of consequence that will echo through the corridors of time until the final judgment." The chosen one felt his heart shatter and mend simultaneously, for he understood that every choice, every moment of rebellion against divine purpose had created ripples that would never cease to spread. The ground beneath him began to glow with an otherworldly luminescence, as if the very earth itself was witnessing his spiritual reckoning. Light poured from above like liquid gold, bathing his form in radiance that transcended human comprehension. This was not merely illumination, it was revelation, a divine spotlight that exposed every hidden corner of his soul where darkness had taken root. "You have walked away from the path of righteousness." The voice continued its timbre, now carrying the weight of infinite mercy. "But I have not abandoned you. My love for you is as constant as the stars, as enduring as the mountains that stand firm against the storms of time." The chosen one's knees buckled as the magnitude of this truth crashed over him like a tidal wave of grace. His mind reeled as he remembered the countless moments when he had chosen comfort over conscience, convenience over Christ's worldly approval, over divine calling. The memories flooded back with crystalline clarity, each decision made in the shadow of doubt, each compromise born from fear rather than faith. He saw himself as he truly was, a vessel meant for divine purpose, yet filled with the dust of rebellion, the residue of choices that had led him further from the light. The sacred scroll continued to unfold, revealing verses that spoke directly to his heart. These were not mere words on parchment, they were living testimonies of God's unwavering love, even when his child had turned away. The ink seemed to flow with tears of compassion, each droplet containing the prayers of generations who had walked similar paths of spiritual wandering. "Align with God's will," the voice commanded. But it was not a demand, it was an invitation, a gentle coaxing that spoke to the deepest longings of his spirit. The chosen one felt his soul stir with recognition, remembering that yearning for divine purpose that had been buried beneath layers of self-pity and misplaced priorities. The light around him intensified, and suddenly he could see the future unfolding before him, not as a predetermined fate, but as a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of obedience and faith. Every decision that had seemed like a mistake, every path that had led him astray, could now become part of the beautiful story of redemption that God was writing through his life. His breath came in ragged gasps as he realized that this was not the end of his journey. It was the beginning of his true calling. The wrong decisions had not been in vain.